Picture this. A young woman stands calmly in an airport terminal as security guards surround her. She's been told to leave. What they don't know? She's Chuck Norris's daughter. What happens next will leave you speechless, and trust me, you've never seen airport security handled like this before. This is a story of underestimation, family legacy, and a lesson that some people learn the hard way. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The terminal buzzed with the usual chaos. Travelers rushing to gates, announcements echoing overhead, and the persistent hum of conversations in a dozen languages. But today was different. Today, someone was about to remind everyone that sometimes the apple doesn't fall far from the legendary tree. Meet Sarah Norris, 28 years old, martial arts instructor, and yes, Chuck Norris's daughter. Unlike her famous father, Sarah preferred to keep a low profile. She traveled under her married name, dressed casually in jeans and a simple black jacket, looking like any other passenger. But beneath that unassuming exterior lay years of training, discipline, and a genetic code that spelled trouble for anyone foolish enough to cross her. Sarah was returning from a charity event in Los Angeles, where she'd been teaching self-defense to underprivileged youth. Her connecting flight to Austin had been delayed, and she found herself with 3 hours to kill. Little did she know, those 3 hours would become the most talked about incident in DFW airport history. As Sarah sat quietly reading near Gate 12, a commotion erupted nearby. A young mother was frantically searching for her 7-year-old son, Marcus, who had wandered off while she dealt with their delayed flight. The woman was nearly in tears. Airport staff seemed overwhelmed, and other passengers looked on with mixture of concern and annoyance. Without hesitation, Sarah approached the distraught mother. "Ma'am, I can help you find your son," she said calmly. "What's his name? What was he wearing?" The mother, Maria Gonzalez, looked up with desperate hope. "Marcus, he's wearing a red Spider-Man shirt and blue jeans. He has autism and doesn't respond well to strangers. I only looked away for a minute." Sarah's expression softened with understanding. "Don't worry, we'll find him." What happened next was poetry in motion. Sarah's trained eyes swept the terminal, analyzing sight lines, potential hiding spots, and crowd patterns. Within minutes, she spotted Marcus. Not lost, but trapped. The boy had somehow managed to get into a restricted maintenance area and was now stuck behind a locked door, too scared and confused to call for help. This is where things went sideways. Fast. Sarah approached the airport security supervisor, a man named Dennis Walsh, mid-40s, 10 years on the job, and absolutely convinced he'd seen it all. She explained the situation calmly and professionally. "Sir, there's a child trapped in the maintenance area near Gate 12. We need to get him out immediately." Walsh barely looked up from his clipboard. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back. This is security business." "The child has autism," Sarah pressed. "He's scared and probably getting more agitated by the minute. I can help." "What you can help with," Walsh interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension, "is moving along and letting us do our job. We don't need some random passenger playing hero." Sarah took a deep breath. Her father had always taught her that patience was a warrior's greatest weapon. "I understand protocol, but I'm trained in child psychology and crisis intervention. Let me help." Walsh's eyes narrowed. "Trained? Lady, I don't care if you think you're some kind of expert. You're interfering with airport operations. Security!" Two additional guards approached. Sarah remained perfectly calm, but those who knew what to look for might have noticed the subtle shift in her stance. Balanced, centered, ready. "Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to leave the terminal," announced guard number 1, stepping closer to Sarah. Sarah's voice remained steady. "I'm a paying passenger with a valid ticket. I haven't broken any laws. I'm simply trying to help find a missing child." Walsh's face reddened. "You're causing a disturbance and interfering with security operations. You either leave voluntarily or we'll escort you out." From across the terminal, Maria Gonzalez watched in horror as the very person trying to help her son was being threatened with removal. Other passengers began to notice the commotion, pulling out phones to record what was clearly escalating beyond reason. Sarah looked directly into Walsh's eyes. When she spoke, her voice carried a quiet authority that made everyone within earshot pause. Sir, I'm going to give you one chance to reconsider. That child needs help. His mother is terrified, and you're letting your ego get in the way of doing what's right. Walsh laughed mockingly. Oh, now we're getting threats? That's it. You're out of here. He nodded to his guards. Escort her out. Now. As the first guard reached for Sarah's arm, she simply said, I wouldn't do that if I were you. What happened next lasted approximately 3.7 seconds, but it would be replayed on social media for years to come. The guard's hand never reached Sarah's arm. Instead, he found himself gently but firmly redirected, his own momentum carrying him into a stumbling pirouette that left him facing the opposite direction, completely unharmed but thoroughly confused. The second guard, seeing his partner's predicament, moved in more aggressively. This was a mistake. Sarah's response was like watching water flow around rocks, effortless, natural, and absolutely unstoppable. The guard found himself seated on the terminal floor, looking up in bewilderment, with no memory of how he'd gotten there. Walsh, finally realizing he might be dealing with someone unusual, reached for his radio. We need backup at Gate 12. We have a situation. Sarah shook her head sadly. No, sir. What you have is a missing child and a crisis of priorities. That's when Marcus's faint voice could be heard from behind the maintenance door. Mommy? Mommy, where are you? As backup security arrived, so did someone else entirely. Chuck Norris himself, having come to pick up his daughter. The legendary martial artist and actor walked through the terminal like a force of nature, his presence immediately commanding attention. Sarah! He called out, spotting the commotion. Every head in the terminal turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is that Chuck Norris? Oh my God, it's actually him! Wait, did he say Sarah? Walsh's face went from red to pale in record time as the pieces clicked into place. Sarah Norris, Chuck Norris, the woman he'd just tried to have forcibly removed from the airport. Chuck surveyed the scene with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent decades reading situations. His daughter, surrounded but unruffled. Security guards looking confused and embarrassed. A crying mother nearby. What seems to be the problem here? Chuck asked, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. Before Walsh could stammer out an excuse, Sarah spoke up. Dad, there's a child trapped in the maintenance area. These gentlemen were more concerned with removing me than helping him. Chuck nodded once. I see. He turned to Walsh. My daughter is a certified crisis intervention specialist and child psychologist. She was trying to help? Walsh could barely speak. Mr. Norris, we didn't know. She didn't identify herself. She shouldn't have needed to, Chuck replied simply. A child is in danger. That's all that should matter. Within minutes, maintenance had unlocked the door. Sarah knelt down as a frightened Marcus emerged, speaking to him in calm, gentle tones that immediately put him at ease. The reunion with his mother was tearful and beautiful, with Maria thanking Sarah repeatedly through her tears. As the terminal returned to normal, Walsh approached Sarah and her father. His apology was genuine, his embarrassment complete. Miss Norris, I owe you an apology. We completely mishandled this situation. Sarah smiled graciously. Mr. Walsh, you don't owe me an apology because of who my father is. You owe me an apology because you let protocol override compassion. You owe that little boy and his mother an apology because you prioritized your authority over their crisis. Chuck placed a proud hand on his daughter's shoulder. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but sometimes it grows into something even better. The incident became a teaching moment for the entire airport staff. New protocols were implemented emphasizing de-escalation and community cooperation. Walsh himself became an advocate for these changes, often telling new trainees, listen first, assume nothing, and remember, anyone can be a hero if you let them. So the next time you're quick to judge someone, remember Sarah Norris. Remember that heroism doesn't announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it's just a quiet person in jeans and a jacket, willing to step up when others step back. And if you ever find yourself thinking about causing trouble in an airport, well, just remember, you never know whose daughter might be sitting nearby.